Have you ever had a crush on someone or been in love? I've had my share of crushes and I've fallen in love. And as a result, I've come to think that one of the most agonizing human experiences is being in love with someone and wanting them to love you back. I imagine God handles heartbreak better than I do and doesn't need to devour a dozen or so cupcakes or take some shots of tequila if someone doesn't love God back. I started thinking about this past Sunday when I heard the first reading. It was from chapter 8 in the book of Deuteronomy. It's Moses speaking to the people right before he leads them into the promised land. Moses reminded them that for 40 years, God had directed their journey in the desert and the wilderness. And in the whole speech, which we don't hear at Mass, he tells them of the things that had happened and successes that came to be as a result of their faithfulness in God. Initially, God wasn't so sure that the people were going to be faithful to him. He wasn't so sure that the people were going to love him back. So he waits, he watches, he lets them wander a bit, just like a parent might watch a child to see if he or she is going to behave and do what they are supposed to do. And once God determines that the people are faithful to him, things change. Things change for them. God gives them manna in the desert to feed them, to nourish them, and sustain them. And Moses reminds them of this. Moses tells them twice. And when someone in the Bible says something more than once, it's a great idea to pay attention because what they're saying is important. So Moses tells them twice, manna, a food unknown to your fathers, was given to them. An unknown food was given to them? An unexpected food was given to them to sustain and nourish them? How awesome is that? Something that they had no knowledge of, couldn't conceive of, or likely couldn't even imagine was given to them by God to sustain them for those 40 years in the desert. Manna became a thing, just like drive-by birthday parties are a thing. If 4 months ago someone would have said to you, I'm going to celebrate your birthday by driving by your house and honking my horn, you probably would have said, I'd rather you not do that. But God gives us things. Unknown things become a thing with God in our lives. And as we start to end our isolation experience and shelter-in-place orders expire and lakefront paths open, the words of Moses assessing those 40 years in the desert and helping the people remember and recall their journey, just as they're about to step into the promised land, feels similar to the position that we are currently poised in. He doesn't bring up that time that they almost killed him because they were so angry and frustrated at him. And similarly, maybe we've forgotten that it was just a couple of weeks ago that we were angry and frustrated with our quarantine partner, but now we are excitedly making plans to go have an outdoor meal with them at a restaurant. He doesn't say, see, I told you so. I knew I'd get you out of there. No, instead what he does is he reminds them of how faithful they were to God, and he encourages them to remain faithful and loving towards God, even once they're out of the desert. In the past several months, we've gone from going to work and going to school to working, learning, and helping to teach our kids at home. I think if in January someone would have told us, oh, you won't have to go into your office every day, you would have been thrilled, just like the Israelites would have joyfully responded to knowing that they were going to be freed from slavery. But the journey to the promised land is hard. It was so hard for the Israelites that some of them wanted to return to slavery. And life is hard, whether it's in 21st century America or journeying through the desert and the wilderness from Egypt to Canaan. This excerpt in Deuteronomy is here to remind us that we have to be faithful to God in the desert to get to the promised land. We cannot get to the promised land if we abandon God in the desert. And when we are faithful to God, our journey will feel a little easier. I used to think that the desert times of our life were those low moments or times when God felt far away. But hearing this speech with the concluding of quarantine years, I see desert time as a time for us to respond to God's love and faithfulness for us. It's a time for us to trust God, a time for us to love God, and a time for us to have faith in God. The promised land will come into our view, and 4 months doesn't seem nearly as bad as 40 years. A time of sporting events, traveling, concerts, hugging people without abandon, birthday celebrations, cars not included, are on the horizon. And who knows what unknown things God has in store for us. Some questions for reflection. What has been your manna? What unknown things have nourished and fed you during this time? What does the promised land look like for you? And how can you continue to be faithful to God? Stay safe and be well.